Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to Season 2, Episode 64 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we help you prevail throughout Week 13 and the rest of the 2022 fantasy football season. I'm your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, we're recording on Wednesday night due to some scheduling conflicts, so it feels a little early to be recording for a week preview. But how are you feeling with Week 13 right around the corner?
It's weird, man. It's December. Like, what? There's a month. There's not even a month left of fantasy football. So
that's
sad.
Not fun.
Well,
that's
for me there is, because I play in a playoff fantasy bracket, but it ain't the same, man. It ain't the same. That's best ball.
I'm with you on that. But anyway, this is our Friday show. We do the show on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and live on Sundays. On the Friday show, we usually will give you the news going into the weekend, and then give you an all bust and all boom team from me and Nick, and then a flex on them segment. Because of the Wednesday scheduling conflict and stuff like that, it's a little bit different. We don't have any news or injury updates for you that were not on yesterday's Thursday show. You're probably going to get more up-to-date information by checking Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport's Twitter timeline. But we still have an all boom and all bust team that we've come up with together. And then we are doing a flex on them at the end of the show to end that segment. So there you go. So with that said, if this is your first time listening to us, thank you so much. You can find the show on all audio streaming platforms. If you're on iTunes or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. If you'd rather watch and listen to the show, go to our YouTube channel, Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a like on this video. Drop a like on any video that you do watch in the future. Keep connecting with us on social media, PrimeTimeFFPod, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, then Facebook and YouTube, Primetime Fantasy Podcast. We'll also be hosting our live show this Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. It'll be hosted by yours truly. Nick's going to be away. He has some business to take care of, and that's okay. So it's going to be just me riding solo. So come join, ask some fantasy questions. It might be a little bit of a shorter show, depending on how many questions we're getting, but we're going to go from about 8:30 to 9:30, something like that. And then I'll go get my grease and oil changed or something like that. But anyway, that show will be on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter like they normally are. And Nick will be joining us again next Sunday. So there you go. All right. Moving on to our first segment. It's normally the news, but once again, any news we give you right now would be totally dated. So we're going to give you our all boom and all bust team, starting with all boom. These are players that we both agree that we think are going to boom this week. So let's start off with our quarterback. I want to give props to Nick for doing most of the notes for this show while we scrambled to fix the recording schedule. So there you go. Let's start with our boom. Trevor Lawrence is our boom quarterback. Nick, first off, I want to give you an opportunity here. Nick wanted to boom Mike White. I said Mike White was a good boom against the Vikings D, but, he has some easier matchups coming up. Jacksonville, Detroit. And I said, if he's going to be on a future team, well, let's boom Trevor here. But I want to give you an opportunity to at least speak about Mike White. He won't be on a graphic, but, if you listen to the show, you get a bonus boom this week.
I mean, it's quite simple. The Bengals he played last year, they were one of the worst teams against the wide receiver. Last week they played Chicago, one of the other worst teams against the quarterback position. In both those games, he finished as a top 5 quarterback on the week. So quite simply, your FedEx Air player of the week, Mike White. For me, when you're going up against Minnesota, who has allowed a lot of points to the past few quarterbacks in these matchups and a lot of points, Mac Jones just came off his best game of his entire career, 382 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. There was no doubt in my mind that Mike White should absolutely be started in leagues this year. And you can't have concerns about the ceiling because he's already proven in 2 of his 4 starts that he finishes a top 5 quarterback. One of the others he got injured during. So, quite simple. Play that matchup.
So our boom quarterback that we agreed on is going to be Trevor Lawrence, who's coming off that huge win against the Baltimore Ravens. He had an excellent fourth quarter from a fantasy and an NFL standpoint. Facing the Detroit Lions, who allow the absolute most fantasy points to quarterbacks. The last three quarterbacks that face the Lions have averaged over 20 fantasy points per game. On the year, Trevor Lawrence is quarterback 11. I don't think he was in either of our top 12 fantasy quarterback rankings, but he's number 11 on the season. He's had 2 very poor games against very good defenses. Philly and Denver, both 2 top 5 defenses against fantasy quarterbacks. But if it wasn't for those 2 games, Trevor's probably a top 8 fantasy quarterback. The easier matchups for Trevor have been monster games. This is an easier matchup. Play him against the Lions. Play the matchup on this one. Okay, Nick, who would you say is our first boom running back for week 11? I mean, week 13. I wish it was week 11. That'd be nice.
You know that bad man, Aaron Rodgers, always says that he owns the Packers.
He's been bad this year. That's
He is
a way
a
to
bad
describe
man, a very bad man.
He's been bad this year.
He's been very bad. But the real owner of the Packers is Mr. Aaron Jones. When they played earlier this year, he managed to put up a calm 15 carries for 130 rushing yards. And then in the receiving game, 3 for 38 and a touchdown. He finished as a top 5 running back that week. That was his best game of the year with 32 points. In Chicago, they have not improved against the run. They ranked number 27, and since losing 2 of their top defensive studs to trades and getting those draft picks, they've been one of the worst defenses in all of football. So I think Aaron Jones, goes out here, has a day. Doesn't matter if it's Jordan Love or Aaron Rodgers at the helm. And he should absolutely be locked. I mean, you're not really questioning locking him into lineups, but you should expect a big game for him to be able to carry you to a win this week.
All right. Our second boom running back's on the other side of the field. David Montgomery. Like we've been saying, no Khalil Herbert means more carries, more volume, more receptions. The offense has to run through David Montgomery. I think he had 70 rushing yards or something like that last week against the Jets. I think 11 fantasy points. And the Jets are a top 3 defense in the league. So if he's going to do that against the Jets with, who started at quarterback? Is it Trevor Siemian? All the Jets had to do was defend the run, and they didn't defend the run as well as they probably could have. So, with that said, David Montgomery, if he could do that against that Jets defense, should be able to carve up the Packers defense. The Packers also ranked 26th against the run. They allowed the 6th most fantasy points to running backs. And with Justin Fields still dinged up, I think he is going to play this week. But if he does, if he does, I think they rely on Montgomery even more. But, if he doesn't, again, they have to rely on Montgomery in this. There was one game where he got hurt. Every other game, he's at over 12 carries. That's the volume. Chase the volume. Last 2 weeks, more passing game workload without Khalil Herbert. No committee. It is all David Montgomery's backfield. Play the matchup and play that game. Should be a good game for both of those running backs. Who was our first all-boom receiver for Week 13?
A.J. Brown is a man on a mission, and he is going to go get his revenge against the 31st team against the wide receiver, the Tennessee Titans. A.J. Brown's been a monster this year. He's getting monster volume, monster workload. He's averaging 8 targets per game with 80 receiving yards across the entire season and has 7 total touchdowns. He's played in 11 games. That's tied for the 4th most in the NFL for all pass catching options, including Travis Kelce and other running backs. So he's getting the volume. He's getting the workload. He's got the easy matchup. I mean, A.J. Brown, you're locking him in every week, but again, just expect the monster game this week.
All right. I do love revenge games a lot. So my second all-boom wide receiver is going to be Christian Kirk, a guy that I've been down on this year, but I think he's been inconsistent. I think my best comp for him from a fantasy perspective is Tyler Lockett before this season. He's up and down. He's either scoring you 15 points or he's scoring you 5. He is a wide receiver 10 on the year because of a bunch of those boom games. And he's gone up against a bottom 3 team in the Lions. They're really bad against wide receivers. They're good. They're bad against everybody. We could say boom the entire Jaguars offense, but they're bad against receivers. In 7 out of the 11 games he's played, he's had over 9 targets, probably catching at least 5 of them. He's got a chance for a touchdown, chance for 50 yards, chance for a really good game. He has 7 touchdowns, tied with A.J. Brown, 4th most in the NFL. Chase the touchdowns, chase the volume, and play Christian Kirk. Who was our first all-boom player, our first flex player in our all-boom team? We each have one guy from our teams here, and I think we each picked the other person's player. So I picked this player for the team.
Yes, sir, and I love it. I love me some Garrett Wilson, baby. I was shocked to see this. He's actually the wide receiver 22 on the entire year. I would not have thought it was that high. But the most impressive thing when I was looking at the stats for this is in games where Zach Wilson hasn't played, he's averaging over 10 targets a game, 80 yards, and a touchdown in each of them. That's ridiculous. Like, that's literally wide receiver 1 on the year type of numbers. And now he's going up against Minnesota, who's allowed the 5th most points to the wide receiver position. Just like I like Mike White, you got to love Garrett Wilson. Last week, he put up 5 catches, 95 yards, and 2 touchdowns, ranked as one of the top receivers on the week. Expect him to go back out there again. Just to go back into that Minnesota matchup, I had to go do a little bit of digging because I did want to see just how bad they were because they've been in a lot of primetime games recently, and I remember that defense allowing a lot of points. Here's the last 5 receivers that they faced, or the top scoring receiver on each team. DeAndre Hopkins, 34, Terry McLaurin, 17, CeeDee Lamb, 10, which was actually one of his worst games of the year. But they were up so much early that they just winded up going to Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard's passing game winded up being over 100 yards as well. Stephon Diggs, who put up 25, and Nelson Aguilar put up 19. That averages out to 21 points per game over the last 5 games to the highest scoring wide receiver. And if Garrett Wilson is that, which he has been for the Jets all year, he is going to be a lock to be a top 10 receiver on the week.
So the all-boom flex player from my team is Tyler Lockett. Facing the Rams, who are a bottom 10 team, the wide receivers have been for most of the season. Jalen Ramsey looks cooked. Aaron Donald's not going to play this week, which is wonderful news. Matt Stafford's not going to play this week. Allen Robinson is gone. Cooper Kupp is gone. The Rams are a bottom 5 team in football. Like, they're bad. They're really bad. They're going to end up at the top 6-5 draft pick, and it's going to the Lions, I believe, or something. So there you go. Tyler Lockett's at 4 straight games with a touchdown. And in non-touchdown games, he's still averaging 12 fantasy points. That's pretty consistent. That's a thing that I've knocked him for not being consistent, but this year he's flipped that around on me. He's only had 2 games under 12 fantasy points this season, and he's outscored DK on the season and per game. That's something I would not have predicted before the season. Okay, Nick, who is our all boom tight end for week 13? Because you put the all boom in and I put the all bust in.
I'm rolling with Pat Freiermuth. Atlanta is one of the bottom 10 teams against the tight end. And with Kenny Pickett at the helm, he's averaging over 7 targets per game. That is a lot of volume for a tight end. The position has thinned out a lot due to some of the injuries. Kyle Pitts, who has been inconsistent, but has been a starter for a lot of leagues. Dallas Goedert's been hurt. Zach Ertz is gone for the year, right? Like, there's been so much thinning, and Pat Freiermuth seems to be one of those consistent workload guys on the rest of the year. Since the bye week, he's averaging a little over 8 targets a game and 10 points per game. No touchdowns in that span. So if he's putting up a touchdown with that average, that's 16 points. That's literally good enough for a top 5 tight end on the week. So you got the consistency, you got the volume, you got the good matchup. It's everything you want from your tight end position. I think he should be locked into lineups for the rest of the year.
All right. Moving on to week 13, all bust teams. I wanted to bust. Who did I want to bust? No, I can't remember.
I don't remember.
I don't remember. Anyway, but I'm gonna let you take this one, Nick. There's a guy that you want to bust. So why don't you lead this one?
I'm busting Kirk Cousins. I know it's 1:00, and 1:00 Kirk Cousins is like hoodie Carmelo Anthony, right? Like one of the best players at their sport, but we're not getting 1:00 Kirk Cousins at 1:00. We're getting primetime Kirk Cousins up against those New York Jets this week. The Jets are top 10 against the quarterback position. And Kirk Cousins, he's been turning the ball over a lot this year. That's been one of the things he's been consistent with. But when you add the offensive coach, they take a few more risks. One of the big things they taught Kirk Cousins is Justin Jefferson is shut down. He is never shut down. He is always open. He's still averaging about a turnover a game on the entire year. And the Jets are top 5 in turnovers forced on the season. So you're going to expect at least 1 turnover, maybe multiple with how big of a gap it is. Maybe you see one of those Dallas Cowboys type defensive shutdowns against the team. And the Jets have been very good against pocket quarterbacks. The only quarterback they really struggled with since week 3, and it's a very young defense, is Josh Allen. That's because of Josh Allen's mobility. Outside of that, the highest scoring quarterback against the Jets has been Mac Jones, who has scored 12 points. That is absolutely abysmal. That I think is one of the craziest stats I have to see for one of the defenses. So for me, I can't trust Kirk Cousins in this matchup. I have him in a couple leagues. I am absolutely pivoting to Mike White in those leagues.
What week did they face the Bengals? Is that week 3?
That was week 3.
That was week 3.
That was very early on.
My only counterpoint to Kirk Cousins is that they're playing at home, so the Jets have to make that travel to Minnesota. And Kirk was really good against the Patriots defense. Different defense, obviously. But I think this game's going to be really telling for both teams. The Vikings are like 9-1 or something, or 9-2 or something like that. So it's going to be really telling to see if they could beat this Jets team. I think the Vikings have a better roster than the Jets, especially better offense. The Jets have the better defense. I think it's going to be really telling for both teams, and it could affect the playoff ramifications for both teams. So it's going to be an interesting game. I like seeing a game like this in week 13. Another game, I mean, we'll see a couple of these games. There's a couple of really good games this week.
Yeah.
So our first all bust, running back is going to be Alvin Kamara facing those Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football, a top 3 defense against the running backs. And Tampa's gotten much better over the last few weeks from a defensive standpoint. Last 4 weeks, Kamara's only averaging 9 carries per game and 30 rushing yards per game. Only one game over 9 fantasy points since week 8, and it was 13 points. Kamara's not been the guy that you thought you were getting based off a name value in round 2. He's almost borderline benchable, and Nick put this note in that he'd rather play Rachaad White over him. I think if you took the names aside, you might want to, but that Saints defense is also tough. I think rest of season maybe, but this week I think I'd still give Kamara a slight edge over Rachaad White. But this is going to be a pretty defensive matchup. I don't think it's going to be a pretty fantasy friendly game on Monday night. But that'll be a talk for a Monday show. But yeah, Kamara definitely. I'm not saying bench him, but don't expect a good Kamara game. All righty, Nick. You love talking about this player who I think's been like a top 15 running back on the year or something like that.
I think he's in the top 10, which is annoying.
Looking at it right now, Miles Sanders right now is the running back 13 on the year.
Okay, so just outside the top 10. Yeah, Nick spoiled it. It's Miles Sanders. And I know I don't like him, and I know he he's one of the guys that proved me wrong this year. Good for you, Miles Sanders. I'm proud of you, but Tennessee's front 7 has been absolutely locked down against running backs this year. They're ranked number 6 in the league. And the problem for Miles Sanders with me is it's kind of like the Gabe Davis thing, where his ceiling is so high because, Josh Allen's got one of the biggest arms in the league. He could get that ball down the field, and if Gabe Davis gets one of those, he breaks the game open. And for Miles Sanders, it's if the Philly can run the ball, they run it extremely well, and Miles Sanders has that high ceiling. But just like Gabe Davis has proven, a very low floor. He has 4 games with under 8 points this year. That's not good. That's the reason he has not cracked into the top 10. And he's pretty much getting no workload in the passing game. So it's actually surprising because Miles Sanders seems like, when you have no passing game workload, it feels like you're a touchdown or bust running back. And of course, Sanders has a good shot to score because that Eagles offense gets the ball down the field. But against that Tennessee front 7, I'd be very scared. I have a conspiracy about the Tennessee front 7 and why it's so good. It's because they're constantly getting stiff armed by Derrick Henry. So they're like, it's almost like very good practice because no other running back in the league is going to stiff arm like Henry. So
yeah,
they're going to make a lot of those tackles.
Yeah.
Like, I actually think that has a big factor to do with why they're so good.
Our wide receivers are like the same wide receivers you see every week on the all boomer, all bust team. It just depends on what side they're on. This side is the bust side. CeeDee Lamb. Nick wrote in the note, last time we're busting CeeDee all year. Nick wrote that. I can't promise that. Indy's the number 1 team against wide receivers. I do typically bust the player that's against the number 1 against their position. And who hasn't slowed down? Can you explain that note? Is that Indy or haven't slowed down since
the Indy defense? Like their defense has still been elite even since. Like they've shut down the Eagles pretty well.
Yeah, they did play the Eagles very tough.
Yeah.
So I would not project a high volume game for CeeDee Lamb. I think this could be a game where they turn to the running backs. And I feel like the team runs through the running backs. I don't think this is Dak Prescott's team. I think this is Zeke and Pollard's team. And in Jerry Jones's eyes, it's Ezekiel Elliott's offense. So I wouldn't bench CeeDee Lamb again, but tough matchup. I wouldn't be surprised if he had under whatever his projection is, probably 15 or something like that. Who is your second bust on wide receiver?
I'm going with Terry McLaurin. He's going up against the Giants, who have been a top 5 team against the wide receiver position. McLaurin looked pretty good early on in the year with Carson Wentz and once Heineke got in. But I always say that you got like 2 weeks of your new quarterback to be extremely talented. And then after that, defenses figure them out. So McLaurin, he's been Heineke's been figured out a lot. That offense has not been as explosive in the last couple of weeks. And McLaurin's role, he really is more of a big play guy, like a 15, 20-yard route guy. But I think his role needs to be more like Deontay Johnson for him to succeed. Not this year's Deontay, but one of the past few years where you're going to go give him 10, 12, 15 targets from 10 yards out, and you're going to go let him make a play for himself. I just don't think they're using him right with Heineke, and it's a really bad matchup for me to trust him and leverage him. I think there's too many good plays this week. There's a lot of high-value wide receiver options. We had 4 on the all boom, and I think there were 2 guys that we had to take off because we liked other guys. So I think you can pivot off of him for this week.
So I wanted this player on here. I have Jeff Wilson, who's been really productive since going to Miami. I believe he's had over 12 fantasy points in all 3 games since going to the Dolphins. Now he's facing the San Francisco 49ers, who are the number 1 team against running backs in fantasy football. On top of that, that's his old team. Kyle Shanahan knows his players best, I think. So I think he's going to have a really good game plan to really shut down Jeff Wilson and that running game. On top of that, Raheem Mostert might play. I do want to note this. Did you see the stuff going on with Raheem Mostert earlier this week?
No, I didn't.
I didn't see it officially, but apparently he was like knocking Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers for like how they handled his injuries. So it's a bit of a revenge game for Raheem Mostert, I think, if they wanted to use him a little bit. And a revenge game for McDaniel. But Jeff Wilson is not the running back I would like to play in this one. It's going to be a really good game. Did they flex this into Sunday Night Football or not? I thought I saw they were trying to.
Yes, they did. They
did. Okay,
they pulled
God.
the Broncos game out.
Well, no, on ESPN it has the Sunday night game as the Cowboys and Colts game.
Oh, so maybe next week was moved.
Hold on, Sunday night.
Oh no, next week was flexed out for the Denver. So this is
Sunday Night Football Week 13. Is it really going to be the stupid Cowboys game? It is going to be the fucking Cowboys game. Come on, man! I don't want to watch the Cowboys and the Colts. Ugh, why?
This would have been such a sick matchup. I wish it didn't have to interfere with red zone.
We have the Bengals and the Chiefs. We have the Dolphins and the Niners, like the Jets and the Vikings. This is Jerry Jones's bullshit and nonsense. Like, I don't want to watch this game. I don't. I'm not watching this game. It'll be on the TV, but I'm not watching it. I'll do something. I'll play on my phone. Like, I barely watched the Monday night game because the Colts and the Steelers are boring. Like, it was bad.
Yeah.
They're boring football teams. They're not fun to watch. There's no stars. Like, I don't care. Like, I guess if I had Zeke or something, I'd care. I mean, I have Jonathan Taylor, but I just don't care. I don't know. It's just like, I don't know. That's my little rant anyway. So who's your second flex all bust of the week?
Nick, you know we love our stacks, and we went with a little Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen action. The Jets are going to shut him down, and Nick might not agree. I would have had the guts to do it, but I would have put Justin Jefferson on.
I came really close to texting you that.
I
was really close to it.
I don't like it.
I was really close to it. You don't bench him, but he probably doesn't have a good game.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. DJ Reed has typically covered the cornerback one on the team, so he will be on Jettas, which means Adam Thielen's getting sauce all game. And that is a recipe for disaster. It is not going to be good. Like we talked about earlier, Dallas forced a ton of turnovers against this team, and the Jets are going to do the same. For me, it's pretty much going to be a touchdown or bust situation, but the Jets have had a top 10 red zone defense on the season. In the last 3 weeks of football, they have the second best defense in the red zone, and they haven't allowed over 20 points in a single game, or they've allowed over 20 points once since week 3, which was against New England, who scored 5 field goals in the game. So it's been very low touchdown volume for teams facing the New York Jets. So for me personally, Adam Thielen, you are absolutely hitting the bench.
He also only has 3 touchdowns on the year. He hasn't been the Adam Thielen we've had in the past few years.
Yeah.
All right, Nick, question time.
Oh, man.
It's a question I've asked for 12 weeks, and it's getting asked again. What defense, well, maybe they're not anymore. They were for many weeks. They're back to number 1. What defense allows the least amount of fantasy points to fantasy tight ends?
It's the New Orleans Saints.
It is the New Orleans Saints. So, K. Dotton and Cameron Brate, you are busted. You're not scoring double-digit fantasy points. Not one tight end has scored double-digit fantasy points against the Saints. George Kittle was the real test last week. No, I think he had like 4.5. The highest scoring tight end against them, I believe, was Isaiah Likely, who scored like 9.4. And that's because he had a touchdown. Without that touchdown, not a good game for Isaiah Likely. I think he had 2 receptions and the touchdown. So with that said, won't be a good game for K. Dotton. Won't be a good game for Cameron Brate. Do not play a Bucs tight end. I am Bucs tight ends on this week. Bad games for both of them. Moving on to our final segment, flex on one player from each game that you can play in your flex spots, or maybe want to play, maybe don't want to play, but we'll tell you which one we would rather play from each side of the ball. Starting off, Jets and Vikings, Garrett Wilson or Adam Thielen. This is an easy one for us.
Yeah, we gave you all the reasons for both. Take Garrett Wilson.
Yep. Deontay Johnson or Drake London.
I take Deontay's volume over London's inconsistency.
Yeah, I'll take him as well. David Montgomery or Christian Watson.
This I thought was a good one because I love Montgomery, but Watson has had the most red zone targets. or end zone targets, not red
I
zone.
think he has 3 straight weeks of 15+ fantasy points. It's just absurd to me.
Yeah. I think it would depend for me if Jordan Love is the quarterback or not. If it's not if it's Aaron Rodgers, I'd rather put Watson out there, but I think Montgomery's definitely the safer play.
I'll play Monty. Zay Jones or DeAndre Swift?
I can't believe that how close of a debate this actually is. I still won't trust Zay Jones in my lineup even after that.
I'm with you on that, yeah.
But man, it would not surprise me if Zay Jones wiped out DeAndre Swift in points this week.
Yeah. Terry McLaurin or Darius Slayton?
I would actually go Darius Slayton here. He's gotten, I think he has 4 games over 14 points out of the last 5 or 6. So he's been getting volume. He's been getting workload, and he's a clear wide receiver 1 on an injury-prone offense.
All right. I will go with Terry McLaurin. I just like the volume. I like that he's the wide receiver 1. I like his quarterback more. And I also like the football team's defense or Commanders' defense has played very well. So, Treylon Burks or Devontae Smith?
I would go with Devontae Smith here. I still don't trust Treylon Burks.
Yeah, well, I trust Treylon Burks, but not against his Eagles defense. I'll go Devontae Smith. How about any Denver running back or any Baltimore running back? I can't tell you who's starting. I think Latavius Murray is set, and then I think on the other side it might be J.K. Dobbins, but I'm not 100% sure yet. So for the sake of the argument, let's say Latavius Murray or J.K. Dobbins.
I would lean Latavius Murray.
So would I. Because Russell Wilson ain't going to pass as many touchdowns on the season than he has bathrooms. That's just, man, I love the Russell Wilson reports every day at this point. It's kind of funny. All right, Donovan Peoples-Jones or Brandon Cooks?
I'm going to go with Donovan Peoples-Jones. I would like to say it's a Texans revenge game, but I'm pretty sure they've had 75% turnover on the team since that happened. So they don't care. The coaching staff's not the same either.
Jalen Waddle or Deebo Samuel?
Oh, that's cruel.
I'll play Waddle. Deebo has.
Yeah, I would go.
From fantasy
Waddle
perspective,
too.
Deebo hasn't been great this year, and Waddle has.
Yeah.
Juju Smith-Schuster or T. Higgins?
I'll go T. Higgins.
I'll go Higgins as well. Higgins right now,
he's 13 on
wide receiver 12 on the season. And the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, he's at over 13 fantasy points. In that span, he's only had 2 touchdowns. So I mean, he's doing most of the work without the touchdown, which is good.
And even without Jamar Chase, he's still been consistent on the first part.
Right. Yeah, that's not going to be a problem. I'm not worried about that. I think that helps the team rather than hurts the team. I think that's a good thing. I didn't have a good one for this one because the Raiders don't have a flex player. So I think we're just going to go with Eckler or Jacobs.
I'll go Josh Jacobs.
I'll go Jacobs too. It's
the running back 1 versus the running back 2 on the year.
I feel like Jacobs is playing like the best running back in the league. And I know Eckler catches a lot of balls, which is going to help him. But Kenneth Walker looked bad against the Raiders last week. And Max Crosby's a freak. So
yeah,
I'll go with Jacobs. Tyler Lockett or any player on the Rams, I guess. The Rams, they're bad. They're just one of these teams that can't exist in this segment anymore.
I mean, there's 3 Seahawks flexible options that I would play. The 2 wide receivers on the running back over any Ram at the moment. So
I don't think I'd want to play any Ram comfortably unless I'm in a 16-man league or something. But even then, I think I'd rather play Nico Collins on the Texans.
I think Van Jefferson would be the most playable one, but
I guess
I don't want Van Jefferson out there.
Tyler Higbee, because the Seahawks are bad against tight ends. It's the only Ram I'd even consider. All right, and the unfortunate Sunday Night Football game. This is I hate it. I hate it so much. CeeDee Lamb and Michael Pittman.
I'd go CeeDee Lamb here, but I don't like either as a play.
I'll go Pittman. I busted CeeDee. All right, that is our Friday show, our biggest show of the week, leading into week 13. If we answered your fantasy questions, we hope that we did, and hopefully our advice helps. If we did it, Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We're going to be live, or I'll be live, answering your fantasy football questions. PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast on Facebook and YouTube, then PrimeTimeFFPod on Twitter. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. If you're watching or listening on YouTube, give us a like on the video, drop a subscribe. We'd appreciate all of that. Keep connected with us on social media, PrimeTimeFFPod on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Then Facebook and YouTube is PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Best of luck in week 13. I'll be speaking to you guys on Sunday.